rest of the stuff.
Nice.
So we're going. I see we're going live.
Yeah, but I don't think we actually go live until the actual start time. So I just kind of open it up.
It does say live up there.
I think people. I think if people are on YouTube right now, which by the way, no one is.
No one's on YouTube. Oh my god.
No, I mean watching us specifically.
My
YouTube.
Yeah, my alphabet stock's gonna tank.
I don't think that any of my 2 subscribers are watching right now. So.
Yeah, on LinkedIn it does say the event will start soon.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Exactly. Exactly. I wouldn't say anything that you wouldn't say live. Maybe this is like the.
That's probably good.
This, right?
Yeah. Like the hot, there's a hot mic issue I think within the world stage with some of the leaders. Were
Tell me about it.
I can hear us on LinkedIn, Brian. I think we are technically live as far as audio.
All right. Well, anyone that's listening, thanks for joining us a little bit early. As always, even though we're technology people, we are figuring this out as we go along. But hey, guess what? Even if they can hear us, they still can't see us, and that's at least half of the nice part about this, right? Otherwise, let's just not turn on the cameras at all. I'm good with that. I don't think I look particularly cheerful or energetic at 9:30 in the morning on a Friday, but heck, who am I?
Listen, I comb my hair for this, both of them. So let's.
That's all right.
What happened to Taylor? What is this garbage?
Comb them with pride, as they say. What is this garbage?
Comb them if you got them, is I think what they say, Brian.
This is Young Thug, and this is his new album. He was recently released from prison. He was there for a while, some RICO charges, and there was a whole lot of back and forth about whether it's intelligent to talk to law enforcement. So I won't go into the social commentary there, and we'll leave it at that. But either way, the album's pretty good. Not a Taylor Swift fan, although maybe some of our audience is, and we'll start playing some Taylor Swift, so Nick and Jill included. What do you think, Nick?
I would love that.
What song would you recommend that I play, Nick?
Probably I think it's her first one on the new album. What is it? Fate of Ophelia or whatever it is. Yeah, Fate of Ophelia.
Well, what is Fate of Ophelia about?
So there's some rumors if it aligns with how Travis Kelce kind of basically like changed her direction that she was going, etc. She's definitely a lyricist, so you not only have to listen but also read the lyrics and try to interpret the meaning behind them.
All right, listen.
I mean, look, if we're gonna break that down, right? So Ophelia's technically from Hamlet, right?
Yeah,
where
correct.
She's brokenhearted, and she dies.
Yeah.
Now, I think in this case, there's a little juxtaposition where Taylor is making using Ophelia as a metaphor for her challenges in her love life.
Yep.
But I think it's a more optimistic song because she's spinning it around about how, in the end, she doesn't die, but she in fact is saved by a love interest.
Yep.
So.
Wow. Great interpretation. Thank you both. I love the depth of information. I'll ask one question. I'm going to bite on this, right? And then we'll get into something that people are probably a little bit more interested in, technology. But when does she make a better album? When she's heartbroken or when she's in love? Go.
No, but listen, that's an easy one because I would say that overall, all great art comes from heartbreak. Because when people are happy, they're not really diving deep into their soul to dredge up all that stuff. They're holding hands, having picnics, skipping through meadows of flowers. So I think you look at all the really great art is coming from times when artists were in really, really dark places. So,
yep.
Boom. And guess what? Now we're live.
What a way to introduce
the dark places.
For real. Well, hello. Welcome to another installment of Friday Coffee. We've been taking a little break here. Is that fair to say, Nick?
Yeah. Yep.
Why have we been taking a break?
Well, you started off with I think you took a week off, and then after that I got married. And then had a honeymoon right after that. So, yep, check it out.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the
it's a good
viewership
reason to
drops
take
by
a-
half.
Yeah.
Burton fans
See you
here.
guys.
right. He came back though, so that's good.
Yep.
And we've talked about this. So most people probably know Nick and I at this stage. Carl, if you want to do a quick introduction, and we'll dive in.
Certainly. My name is Carl Gersh. I am the vice president of marketing at IGL Technology. I've been in the tech business for the better part of 35 years. Did do a stint, which we'll probably talk about on this show, running an advertising agency out of the Northeast, out of Philadelphia. And just in my day-to-day at IGL, I am responsible for all things related to field and channel marketing, plus corporate functions like global campaigns, AR and PR, and and digital.
Nice. Very cool. So, Carl, back to the advertising agency piece. How long ago was it that you did that?
So I ran an advertising agency from roughly 2003 to around 2011.
Wow.
So prior to that, I'd worked in technology. I started my career in distribution. Sometimes I'll call that the salt mine of the industry, with all due respect. But I did work in distribution. And I'll say this, though, distribution was a great way to get into technology, especially in the 90s, because in that role, I had the opportunity to observe not only how the manufacturers, the vendors operated, but also the resellers and then the end users. So it really gave great, it gave great purview over the entire channel, the two-tier channel, that you don't necessarily get if you're at the vendor side, because you're kind of like seeing it through the lens of the distributors or resellers and the end users. So I think distribution was a great start. From there, I was involved with a few startups. I was in New York with my second startup when the dot-com market had the rug pulled out from under us. And we did sell that company, but after selling the company, I went back and invested in and started an advertising agency, because that's when I was pretty deeply involved in marketing. I was discovering that it was really something that I found very fulfilling, and I wanted to sort of ply my trade, as they say, doing marketing for a bunch of different organizations, kind of as a pure play versus being on the, just doing it for one company.
So before we move on, because we talked about this yesterday, I'm peeling back the curtain a little bit here with the show, but we talked about this yesterday. There was a product that you were responsible for helping bring to market. And I thought this was really interesting because I was a consumer of it as well. Like I would go and buy.
I had it here.
I don't even remember CompUSA.
CompUSA.
Shout out to CompUSA sponsoring Friday Coffee. CompUSA.
Yeah. So listen, if I have two claims to fame, maybe three claims to fame in my marketing career that more consumer oriented. One certainly is what Brian's referring to, which is Ball's Guarana soft drink. So my agency, Be Seen Communications, was my agency. We were the primary agency for Balls from around 2004 to around 2010. And we did all the marketing, the packaging, everything. So if you were in CompUSA and you saw that 12-pack, that looks pretty cool. That was my work. That was the work of my agency. We also sponsored the gaming leagues. We sponsored LAN parties. We sponsored paintball. It was a pretty cool run. And I've mentioned before, and I'll give a little shout out, I was just recently in a documentary about Balls Guarana that released at QuakeCon. So if any of your gamers out there, you might remember QuakeCon. Quake was they were very instrumental actually in Balls, because Blues News, which was the go-to site for all things Quake related back in the 90s, was the one that sort of turned the audience onto Balls Guarana. But if you go on YouTube and you search for Balls, you'll find there's a documentary called Up All Night, the Balls Guarana story, that really chronicles the rise of that soft drink, which was kind of cool because it was one of the first energy drinks that was out on the market. We all know Monsters and C4s and and Celsius and everything today, but back in the late 90s, early 2000s, your choices were three. It was either Jolt Cola, which was very sort of like a novelty drink, and not very widely distributed. Red Bull was there, it just wasn't nearly as popular as it is today. And then Balls was really the go-to. So yeah, but that was a pretty cool run. I'll also say this though, in addition to Balls, I did the marketing and promotion for the movie Grandma's Boy, starring guys from Adam Sandler's crew.
Yes.
So, I got a chance to tour with them. We did a whole multi-city road show where we were doing screenings of the movie and stuff. So I did PR and audience marketing for that. And I also worked very closely on a few projects with the guys from Red versus Blue, Rooster Teeth Productions. So if you've ever been to like a Penny Arcade, I also did Penny Arcade actually back in the old days. So if you know Penny Arcade, I did stuff with Penny Arcade and RVB. So we actually produced a video series for Vivendi that won an award at the Academy of Machinima Arts and Sciences. So I can say I was a producer on an award-winning video.
Wow.
How about
Man.
Fun
how about
stuff
this?
back then.
Yeah.
How about this? I was in the gaming industry as well. How about that? I worked on a little game called Civilization, if you've ever heard of it before. So my name is in a few video game credits. I don't think I've ever shared that with anyone. But I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that apparently CompUSA struck a nerve with our audience.
Yeah, we got
They were very excited to hear the words CompUSA. Who would have thought? Maybe they need to bring that back.
But I think Fry's is really the one that I never understood why Fry's never made it like national, because the first time I saw Fry's, I remember that to this day. I was in the West Coast, but Fry's never made it east. But we did have CompUSA, and it was cool. CompUSA was cool. I'll go on record for that. That is a definitive Carl Gershism. CompUSA was cool.
Yeah, that era, that early 2000s, mid 2000s era, that was like peak LAN party time.
Right.
Man, it's like
right. Yeah,
remembering my
childhood
as
friends and
yep.
bring your NAS with you, or open up your firewall and download some pirated software and music. I'm not advocating for that, by the way. Anyone, don't do that. But
don't download pirated software.
Yeah, it's funny how short-lived that was, because how quick, like, the 100 megabit, switch type LAN parties, how quickly the internet evolved afterward to support just online gaming. It was looking back, it was such a short-lived little stint.
You know what they couldn't replicate, Nick, though, with all the modern technology?
Getting together in a room and drinking Monster and eating pizza all night.
The smell
that comes with it. Yeah.
By day three, it definitely smelled like Teen Spirit in that LAN party.
I've never done a multi-day.
They black out, because keep in mind it's a bunch of geeks, and I say that with affection because I'm certainly a geek myself, having played video games since the start of time. But I remember my first LAN party. I was prepared for everything except the odor. I walked in and I was like, ooh. I mean, keep in mind those machines, those PCs are pumping out hot air. No one's showering. It's 3 days of just sleeping on a sleeping bag underneath your rig, and then getting up and playing. And it did get a little ripe by that third day. So should we get candle of that? The LAN party candle. It smells like Funyuns and QQ tears, right?
Oh, maybe you guys can do that as like a conference giveaway or something like that, like ode to LAN party or something like that.
Maybe that's an exciting new product.
Well, shout out to Kelly. She worked in the same building that I did, apparently, and riding the elevator with Sid Meier. Such an unassuming guy, one of the only members of the Video Game Hall of Fame, maybe even like the original de facto OG. Completely unassuming. You would have no idea if you were standing next to him in a crowd, which is awesome, which says something about like humbleness and accomplishment and stuff like that.
Well, it also, but right, so, and I'll match that tale, and because I think it's a great story, and I think it's true, not just of Sid though, but of a lot of the people in the industry, because I'll never forget when I was at E3, back when E3 was a thing. I'm standing on a corner waiting across the street, and I look next to me, there's a guy standing next to me smoking a cigarette, and I did a double take, and it was Will Wright. So SimCity, Will Wright, and he's just standing there like a guy, and I'm like, and people walking past him, I thought to myself, holy cow, like do they not realize it's Will Wright? I mean, who hasn't played some version of SimCity, The Sims, whatever else?
Yep.
And then I realized that the concept of fame is very relative.
Yep.
Right. So if you're a gamer, Will Wright's a god, Sid Meier's a god. Richard Garriott, Lord British. I mean, I had a friend totally do a Wayne's World "We're Not Worthy" moment with Richard Garriott. But if you're not, it's just some guy. And Will Wright and I had a very nice conversation. He was very unassuming. He told me a funny anecdote because his business card had his name redacted on it, and that was apparently some sort of in joke because of some long story that he was telling about. The use of redaction in ways that didn't make sense, so they just had to turn it into a business card and whatnot. But I saw that picture of him. I said, "Can I get a picture of you?" He's like, "Sure." And I got a picture of him, and then I realized that again, right, those that we admire, are it's relative to things that we're interested in, things that we look up to and whatnot. So
I'm
cool.
a big SimCity. Gosh, I remember playing that way back in the day, and I wouldn't know what he looks like. I mean, I would have no idea.
Everyone knows Sim City. Like if you say
Yeah.
it for the
Yep.
most part, if you're any kind of gamer or whatnot,
Yep.
or maybe not anymore. Like it's
No, The
tough to say.
Sims. The
Like
Sims. The
oh,
Sims
the
brought
Sims.
it like.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Yeah, I'd say The Sims made it like it truly mainstream because it broke down the gender barrier. The Sims was like had wide.
It's still ubiquitous, yeah,
Yeah.
to this day. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. So how did you see just from '03? I think you said 11. That's an interesting time to be in advertising in particular, just with technology and everything. How did you see that evolve over that almost decade time span, just from an advertising standpoint? Was it a lot of more traditional organic advertising, and then that evolved as technology kind of evolved with it, or what did that evolution look like as you did that?
I think that's a great question. Listen, so the philosopher Heraclitus once said that the only constant we can expect in life is change. And I used to make the joke, I'd say that at the start of a presentation, corporate capabilities presentation for my agency. And I'd say that, and that's times 10 in advertising and marketing, right? The routes to market are constantly shifting. The principles don't.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take one step back and think about a higher level of abstraction, right? The goal of advertising is to engage an audience, a target audience, get a message in front of them, be compelling so that they take action. And if you think about it from that perspective, then your core how you go to market, is or your general strategy is kind of the same, right? I want to figure out who is it that I'm going to be able to deliver this story to that's going to be most compelled by it. And then I have to then you sort of work backwards to what are the ways in which I can reach them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So do things change? Absolutely. Right. Back in the early days in '03, I was working with one of the clothing brands I worked with. There was no influencers weren't a thing yet,
Mm-hmm.
but we talked about this idea that people would look up to other people, apropos of the conversation we were just having. Right. So we thought, all right, can we identify in gaming? This was a gaming clothing brand called Jinx.com. And we said, are there people that we can get to wear the clothing from the Jinx clothing to epitomize essentially, what our audience should look like and to take that route to market. Now today, there's agencies for influencers, right? I can go to an agency, and actually, I think it's probably even all online with a few clicks of a button. Say I'm trying to target, men between the ages of 35 and 55 who are interested in and they'll give me like 9 influencers that I can engage with, whom I can engage and get that out there. Back then, it was a little more legwork, right? To say, all right, who's out there in the public eye and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, today it's like it's so incredible. Like I just discover a new tool every day, for example, that quickly identifies for you every day on a repeated basis and reaches out to them, the people that you want to reach with your message. Like even this show, if you think about it, like who are we trying to reach specifically, and are we reaching them? And anyone should consider that in any of their pursuit in life. Um, Generally speaking.
Yeah, I agree. And so I'd say that the principles remain the same. The way in which we engage and take action on those principles change. And I think it's one of the most exciting things about being in marketing, right? Is that it's never, you can't come in and do marketing in 2025 the way you were doing it in 2020 or 2015, because the audience is shifting, the way in which they're consuming media is shifting. The media they trust and don't trust is shifting, right? So the thing that was great about influencers, just to stay on that point as an example, is that there was a time when influencers were seen as a trusted source because they seemed at the time when they were getting started as unassailed by marketing, right? It was some guy getting on there saying, hey, I love this product, and I'm just a guy in my basement or my whatever, and people thought, okay, that's more trustworthy than an advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as marketing realized it and started paying these people, then suddenly, that starts to shift. And it hasn't fully shifted, but there's more and more data now that is showing that influencers will remove negative posts about products if they're getting paid by the product company. So the influencer market starts to shift. And then what we have to do as marketers is sort of say one step ahead and say, all right, what is it that our target audience is consuming? What is it they're using when they're formulating their decisions to be informed about a product they want to buy?
Well, can we just step back to that for a second, and influencers and whatnot, and the genuineness of it, or whether it's influence or it's tainted by some sort of like outside. I mean, the moment that I find out an influencer that I invest time in learning from is doing something like that, for example, the trust is gone and they have no influence over me. whatsoever. I assume that some people will continue to consume from that person, but I think on a general sense, it's just like that's an erosion of trust, and that they lose any kind of credibility whatsoever.
I think
Yeah.
that's true. I think that right. That's the big issue, right? So marketing, people say to me all the time, like, oh, marketing is like trying to convince people to buy something they don't want to buy. And I say that's a
Ooh.
very cynical view of it. Effective, good marketing is helping people who have a problem understand if and how your solution can solve their problem. Bad marketing gets someone to buy something they don't want to buy. They have a bad experience. They're unhappy. They're not a repeat customer for your brand. So that initial return on your investment and then making that one purchase doesn't really benefit you, right? Effective marketing is about helping people get clarity to what their issue is, and then being able to lay out in a way that is trustworthy. That this is something that they would that this is a solution to that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tie this into what we do at iGel, right? So at iGel, part of our evolution of the marketing organization was looking sort of at that buyer's journey and saying,
Yep.
okay, what is it? What can we do to get someone from not knowing anything about what iGel's doing, what we're offering, or about a specific offering, to understand, to kind of walk them through that process, right? That buyer journey. So bombarding them saying, hey, come out to our live event, fly to Frankfurt and learn about it probably isn't a good first step. Right. A good first step is, hey, here's a little bit of content you can consume so you can see how it works, learn, what it does and that sort of thing.
Low
If you find it
risk.
interesting. Right.
Low risk, because people's time is very valuable, right? It's the most valuable thing. It's not even arguable. It is. Like, you can't get any more back. Ask Warren Buffett. Don't ask me, right? That's the one thing you can't buy, he says. And we try not to shill, but this is really an interesting topic, and was a question that came in, or rather a statement that came in before the show even stopped, and it said, this product coming is really cool, going to change how companies can approach BCDR. Really cool concept and doesn't break the bank. Now, without shilling, Carl, can you explain that a little bit in the context of what you were just saying?
No, that I would love to, and I'm with you. This product is a challenge as a marketer, because the holy grail, what we dream about, is to work for a company that has a product that really does change the way people can solve a problem, right? They can bring the proverbial better mousetrap to the table, and with that breathless hype now firmly in place, let me say that iGel has rolled out. We announced at the beginning of this month a new offering around business continuity and disaster recovery, aka BC and DR. This BCDR offering from iGel is the ability to use our core product, the iGel operating system, which is a highly secure operating system, as a backup operating system on devices that are running probably Windows today. So rather than say, take iGel OS, install it on your device, and have it be your primary operating system, and that is one of the products we sell, right? You buy iGel OS and put it in your device. Well, we're now offering organizations who say, listen, I have a huge estate of Windows devices. We need to use Windows, but I'm fearful of what happens if these Windows devices go down, most likely due to ransomware, right? The number one thing that's going to take out your endpoint. Mm-hmm. We say we have this offering that you can now put iGel OS on a separate secure partition on the hard drive of all those devices, and it sits there in the background, and the users don't know it exists until that day, and if we believe the cybersecurity experts, it's not a matter of if anymore, it's a matter of when. Mm-hmm. But when that day happens, when devices get taken down by a ransomware attack, all the user has to do is boot into the iGel secure partition, and they're back to core functionality, right, of critical activities, Teams, the Office suite, anything you can deliver in a progressive web app. If you have VDI deployed, obviously all the things in the VDI, your VDI environment. So it fundamentally, and there's no one else that does this. Microsoft has an operating system. It's called Windows. And then in order to make Windows more secure, they've got backup solutions and, EDR solutions and all the other solutions. But what we're offering is, hey, if Windows goes down, reboot, and already on all those machines is a backup operating system that everyone can jump into and work. Yep. And what it means is that, we talk about, an RTO objective is return to operations. And a lot of the focus for the IT teams historically has been on how quickly you can get the data center back up and running. But that's great. If the data center is up and running, but no one can access it, you've not actually met your RTO objective. Mm-hmm. So we're offering is that and we're super excited about it. We've met with analysts, and I'll tell you, like, not that we stumped the analysts, but in our analyst meetings, and we met with all the major analyst groups. We have not had a single analyst not say, this is really interesting. And we asked them in your conversations with end users, with corporate end users, what are their plans for the endpoint? And they're hearing what we had heard, which is, well, if everything goes down, I'm going to send a guy to Best Buy with a credit card and tell him to buy as many laptops off the shelf as he can buy, right? Or so that some of the bigger organizations are taking the disaster recovery approach of 1995, which is, I've got a warehouse and I've got a bunch of laptops in that warehouse, and if something goes wrong, I drive a truck over there, throw them on the truck, drive to the office, and hand them out to the key people who need to have access so they get a fresh laptop that's not infected.
Yep.
What we're offering is a solution that every single person in your organization, through just a simple reboot, can be back up and running. Again, not maybe with all the apps that you have, but with the core apps for things like communications, things like being able to create content, answer emails, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And that's pretty exciting. It's pretty compelling.
So the thing was, he said it didn't break the bank. Why was that something that he called out?
Sure, so the concept of how to use iGel in this capacity has come up in the past, but we've never actually had a licensing model to support it, because our licensing model was you license iGel for, if you're going to use it for a year, you license it for a year times however many users you have, right? So if I have 3,000 employees in my company, I would license iGel OS for 3,000 employees if I'm using it as the primary operating system. But in this case, if you say to someone, well, do that license, but you're not going to use it, very few IT leadership, CIOs, VPs of IT are going to say, listen, I want to buy something I'm not going to use at all.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is come up with a package, right, a licensing model that made sense for those, that this kind of use case. So again, without getting into details, because it's really that's to the discretion of my sales team, the licensing model here is one of, you license for up to 3 years at a nominal cost. It gives you the ability that in the event of emergency, you press the button, iGel OS runs, and you have a certain amount of time for 45 days to use iGel OS as part of that license. So we've calibrated the economic model to meet the use case, which is no one wants to buy, like, again, you don't want to buy a second car as a backup car, but if you had a service where for X dollars a month, if your car breaks, you could get another car, that makes more sense.
Yeah, and you could totally couple that. I mean, Microsoft's doing the same thing with Cloud PC. You could couple that. If you needed a full Windows workspace, you could absolutely couple it with that, etc. It's cool to, I mean, I've been using iGel OS since like the 3X days, and it's cool to see. You always used to pair it with some sort of VDI provider. Now it's cool since like iGel OS 12, just how much it's evolved into like its own independent workspace, where to your point, you really can completely work out of it without having to have that VDI solution you're connecting to with the app portal and everything else. It's truly becoming a user-based workspace OS at this point, which is pretty cool to watch. And I'm excited to see where it goes from there outside of OS 12 and beyond. So
yeah, I'm thrilled to hear you say that, Nick, because honestly, and it's not just OS 12 as a release, as a major release for iGel OS, the iGel operating system helped make that happen. But it was also a shift in management focus, right? Like, the management team at iGel, our leadership team led by Klaus Osterman, in 2023 really doubled down on this idea of doing exactly what you described. I can't say it better than you just said it, right? But we wanted to get out of being this dependency on VDI, because there was so much more you could do with the operating system. To helping people understand that this is a full-fledged operating system, very business focused and that sort of thing. And it's one of the reasons that, it's one of the things that gets me excited every morning when I get up, right? Is to be able to
really
be
awesome
in that space.
I had no idea. I never really even thought about it, but it's such an obvious pivot that you almost dismiss it. And, shout out to Nutanix, because I have a lot of buddies at Nutanix, and whenever it was, like, I thought Nutanix hyper-converged infrastructure was like a really cool thing. And back in the day, like, I was selling people on the concept of it before it was widely adopted. And then they basically said, oh, we're going to kind of step away from the hardware side of things, and we're going to go full software. And I was like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. Like, hardware is such a commodity. Like, if you can offer people something tangible that helps make their lives easier through a software, that's so much cooler. Believe it or not, we have 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
And we try not to make this all about technology. We try to make this about like
yeah. Before we give them our flagship question here at the end, I did want to talk to you a little bit, Carl, about just kind of the convergence of sales and marketing. You've obviously led teams on both sides, and here we have Brian, who is I mean, he's on the sales side, but his title is go-to-market specialist, which to me shows some alignment on the sales and marketing side. How has that kind of evolved over the years, and do you see more and more of a converging trend between the two? Because more and more I'm seeing typically both orgs report up to the same like vice president ultimately. And I just wanted to say, have you share your thoughts around that and what you're seeing in your position right now?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And I think I used to say that in the state of the world today, I don't use this metaphor quite as often, but I used to say that if sales is infantry, marketing is artillery. Mm-hmm. Right. So the two work very closely together. When I had my ad agency, one time I went in for a pitch and I was meeting with the CEO, and he said, I only have enough budget to hire another sales guy or hire your marketing agency. And I zipped up my case and said, hire the other sales guy, then call me in a year. Right. Because the reality is that marketing can do a certain amount to help, bring a buyer through that journey. But fundamentally, transactions are conducted people to people, and you need sales to do that. But sales coupled with marketing becomes a much more effective way to go to market to grow your revenue, grow your business. So, marketing can, if we think about even, and I don't want to get into the weeds of marketing, but if we think about a lead, this concept of a lead, someone that has a propensity to buy your product, right? There's different levels of qualification for that lead, from someone who kind of looks at went, interesting, to someone who says, I'd like to have a sales conversation. Yep. So if you just have a sales team, they got to do all that. But if you have sales and marketing, I mean, we're both kind of focused on the same thing: create demand for the product. Marketing does the top part of it, the top part of the funnel. Sales does the bottom part of the funnel, and that's the way in which the two work together. So it makes sense for them to be in lockstep, and really they are partners. Perhaps the better metaphor I use now is it's although it's a little bit more for a specialized audience. If you ever think about rally driving, right, rally car races, you need two people in that rally car. You need the driver, because without the driver, guess what? Car ain't moving. Yep. But important as well is the navigator, the guy sitting next to the driver, who says, hey, in 200 meters, turn left. Mm-hmm. And without that guy, can the driver do it? Yes. Is he going to go slower? You bet. Because he doesn't know that turn's coming up in 200 meters. He's just trying to avoid the dust and keep the car on the road and everything like that. Yeah. So having the marketing team as riding shotgun, right, as it were, with the sales team in the driver's seat, makes you a much more effective rally team than if you just had that one guy in the seat. But if you have to choose between the two, right, you can't, with no driver, no car, move, right?
I was sitting here thinking in my head, it's because driving it is sexier.
Sure.
I want to feel like, and then because of that comparison that takes place, it's just what happens in our head. We have a tendency of thinking that one is maybe more important than the other. But I agree with you. The other thing that occurred to me, and none of what you said, anyone referenced the car itself, right? Like there has to be a car that works to drive. But yeah.
But in that metaphor, the car is the product of the
product.
Company,
yep.
Right. That you say, okay, we want to try and take this thing and move it and achieve a goal. And then who do we need to achieve that goal? And you're right, Brian. Look, sales is sexier, right? And sales, and I say to people that are, people come to me all the time and say, which direction should I go? And I say, look, there's not a right or wrong, right? It sort of comes down to, where do you see, what turns you on about work every day? What gets you motivated? If it's, sales is a lot of the interaction every day with the customers, right? The adrenaline high of pursuing that deal, closing that deal, right? Making the commission from that deal is unmatched, right? And that is, if that is kind of what you want to do, I highly encourage people to go that route. I've worked both throughout my life. I started in sales actually, and then migrated to marketing, and then have gone back and forth. Marketing is more about engaging, I'd say, the creative and the analytic side of your brain, right? It's, and you can't, one is not more important than the other, right? The analytics are just as important as the creativity. We need both. You need both every day. Yep. So I think if someone's if someone asks me that career advice, I always say, listen, what you got to think about is yourself. Don't look out, look in first. Think to yourself, what is it that is going to make me happy? We spend a lot of time at work, right? 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And if you are unhappy, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. It doesn't matter how much accolades you get. If you don't like what you do every day, you're going to find that, you'll find very quickly, it's a hard lesson to learn perhaps, but you'll learn very quickly that, no amount of money will overcome, that sense of sort of emptiness or dissatisfaction if what you're doing every day is miserable, or it doesn't align with, your interests, your desires, your personality.
Totally.
100%.
So that'll become a soundbite that I'll pull out and repost on LinkedIn for a content piece. We're out of time.
Yep, we are.
We stream by, and we'll do our signature question real quick, Nick, and
yep,
we'll wrap.
Who's next, Carl? Who you tagging him?
Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit because I say there's 2 directions I'd go. I think, apropos of what we just talked about, a fantastic next guest, also from iGel, would be Darren Fields, who leads our UKI sales organization.
Okay.
I think it would be a nice, counterpoint to my perspectives on marketing. Darren is very thoughtful. I mean, he and I have great coffee conversations that we don't broadcast, but I think he'd be excellent in that regard. If you want outside of iGel, certainly Simon Townsend, who is the SVP of marketing over at ControlUp, and Simon and I happen to be very good friends. And I worked for Simon here at iGel, would be also a pretty great guy. But I'd say, if you want my call, Darren Fields is next up, and I think he would be he'll shed great light on sort of what the day in the life of a sales leader is like overall. So
Darren, if you're listening, we're coming from you, and as always, we'll wrap up with our sign of appreciation, both Carl and the people that continue to show up every week and join us and ask good questions and engage with us. Believe it or not, it encourages us to keep going. Nick and I have conversations about whether we should keep doing this. And honestly, we like transparency here. What's the point? Why are we doing it? To what benefit? We do it because it's fun. We like it. We like providing the content. We like talking to the guests. And as a result, we get to present that to the audience. We appreciate you all showing up. So thanks so much. And we'll see you next time.
Well, thanks for having me on,
Carl.
guys.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Enjoy your coffee.
Later on. Bye. Until next time.